call the meeting over, if we could, please.
Here comes Randy.
Randy's here. The first order of business would be the minutes. The minutes from the March 6th meeting. Entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Motion from Sam Hutchins to approve the minutes, second by Jerry Hahn. Any further discussion? All approved, say aye.
Aye.
Disapprove? Motion carried. Next would be your bills list, and we actually have some budgeted line item transfers. Quite a few of those. As we wind up towards the second half of the year, you'll get more and more of those. Then we'll have a budget amendment later on some revenue that's come in that's exceeding projections. That'll be probably, Rhonda, that'll be the next probably meeting.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Wickland.
Yep.
He wants a draw here. Is that what he's got done, or is he
That's what he has done.
right now? How much more has he got to do? Put the roof on, put the
Basically,
windows
put the
Shingles
shingles on, trim on the gable ends, and put the doors and windows. And he's gonna put like a seal coat, basically to seal off any smoke smell back to the rest of it. So basically, he says it should be under the 50, what we really call it. So basically, we'll sit down probably into this week and kind of get a better feel for where we're at.
in? What about the chimney on that side, looking at the front of it? Did he say it was okay, where it got all that heat? Did he look at it? I
When
guess
you
he
look-
framed back up against it. I was out there last night looking at it. I mean, it looks okay, but I'm just wondering how hot it got.
We'll double check that.
Just kind of looking.
Look good to me, but
I know, but you know, I don't know how much hot. Nobody does really, you know. We just had that old log cabin burned down in Coverdale, and both chimneys on it, it was almost the same structure, pretty close to that. But the chimney on the Barstown end, it took some
Got more heat.
substantial heat, yeah.
entertain a motion to approve the bills and transfers.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Bernard Wright, second by Keith Metcalf. Any further discussion? Discussion?
No, just a second.
Sorry?
I'm trying to look, we just got these today, so.
What, the transfers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't get them yet.
I'm not seeing anything crazy, but just,
It's just balancing
Yeah.
on separate budget on items within the same budget, within the same fund.
yeah, I don't see anything.
All approved, say aye. Disapprove? Carried. Yeah, I forgot, Rhonda, that I thought you had emailed those out to the guys.
No,
yesterday.
I did not.
We'll try to make sure we just do that. Next would be, as required by state law, the county judge is to present to the magistrates a proposed jail budget. No action required, just, and this will also go in and with our regular full budget down the road. And Rhonda and I have already convinced we'll make changes based on retirement, based on et cetera, et cetera. It's up about, we're projecting probably another, close to $300,000 additional money going into the jail fund this year for various reasons, and we'll get into those details at a later date. But my requirement today, by April 1, is to present that to you guys. And take it, review it, and we'll discuss it. Board appointments. Actually I have two appointments. First, I'm going to just do them both together. These are reappointments actually. Mary Crum Spalding and Sydney Shouts, both to the Human Rights Commission.
I'll make that motion.
Motion's been made by Sam Hutchins,
Second.
second by Jeff Lear. All approved, say aye. Disapprove? Motion will carry. Let me give you these signed copies here, Wayne. Okay, next would be a resolution related to the parochial transportation for this year. You guys have that resolution in your mailbox?
Yes.
You get a copy of it? Okay. Every year, fiscal court provides funds for parochial transportation of school kids. Each year, it's about a $200,000 to $225,000 expense. we've been lucky since Governor Patton became governor back in the day. Governor Patton, in the budget and going forward, every governor since then has provided the counties with those funds. At one time, we were made whole, then it went back to based on a percentage. Now last year we're back to a whole for the first time in a long time, just based on usage and how much money is allocated. So I would ask fiscal court to approve the resolution, and authorize the judge to proceed forward with this reimbursement.
200,000?
That's an estimated amount. It could be a little, last year was 186 and some change. I've seen it as much as 210, 220,000.
What causes it to go up?
Fuel's a big, on the formula that the schools use. When fuel was $4 a gallon versus $1.99, $2 or so for fuel. You gotta understand, we, as a government entity, we don't pay all the taxes involved that the public does.
We've done it.
Motion to approve by Jerry Hahn. Thank you, Jerry. Is there a second? By Sam Hutchins. All approved, say aye. Disapprove? Motion will carry. Jail report, Dorcas?
Okay, today we have a total of 134 inmates. We have 4 in Hardin County, 1 on home incarceration. We still have 44 state inmates. We have 1 serving weekends. Actually, we have 2. 1 of them come in this morning. And then we've got 2 out to court. So we have an in-house total of 126. Our February daily average, about the highest I've seen it. It was a controlled intake. We averaged 48 a day. Class D's, we averaged 50 a day. Nelson County inmates, we averaged 175 a day. So that's a total of all of them put together of 274 per day is what we average.
Now, we've got the population down.
Yes.
Well, in January, we're at 173 on the average. And you can see at half today, you got 126.
Right.
So we've been able to move state prisoners to other facilities because we can manage the facility better, a whole lot better.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when you
And we've still got several of the state inmates.
still got several states.
To be transferred as soon as they get beds.
And here you said Oldham County with a jail that they haven't fully opened up yet, brand new jail, about 300 people or so for one.
350.
Yeah, and they're probably only less than half full of it yet. They're trying to increment it in to where they can manage it, and which makes sense, by the way, from a business perspective. But we're looking for beds to get rid of the state prisoners through July anyway, until we can see where we're going to go with the jail.
It's just right, right now, you have to send them to other jails. They're very picky about who they take. They only want the 1s and 2 levels because they can put them out to work. The 3s and up, you can't, it's hard to get them transferred anywhere. The new arrest for February, we had 136 males, 48 females. We had a total of 184 releases. We had 154 males, 58 females, so we released a total of 212. Okay, and sentenced inmates out of district court, we don't have any that's sentenced to jail right now, but we do have 2 that's sentenced to weekends. We've got 14 waiting for court. We've got 1 on home incarceration. And then the state inmates, we have 20 controlled intake. We have 24 class D's. Hardin County, we still have 4 over there, of which they're not doing this on, that's a favor of us. Circuit court serving weekends, we have 1. We have 6 that are doing community service, which are inside the jail, doing work in there. We have 1 on work release. We don't have any sentence to jail out of circuit. We've got 1 in drug court. So in circuit court, waiting for court, we've got 64. So we have a total of 78 that's not been sentenced. And our count's up a little today because we've got circuit court Thursday. They're already bringing them in from other counties for circuit court. So they'll be going back as soon as court's over with. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Dorcas.
Judge,
Yes.
just for information purposes, Keith and I attended a conference this past week, and Secretary Tilley gave a very informative presentation about what they're doing to try to alleviate the jail overcrowding and for counties Again, not unique to Nelson County, it's everywhere. I don't know if you've ever heard him talk, but he's a pretty dynamic guy. He cares a lot about his job, I think. And,
Very smart.
really informative. Just to let you know that the people in the state are hearing us, because we are not alone in our jail problem.
Yeah, our lady we've been working with, right underneath them, maybe a step, she's the director of corrections instead of the, Kirsty
Willard.
Kirsty Willard, she's very helpful too. We had a little meeting not too long ago with her, and we were talking about the problems that Dorcas has had at the jail for the last 60 days, 90 days, 120 days or longer. And she said there's not a jail in the state of Kentucky that doesn't have the same problems. People try to bust out, people doing what you call contraband coming into the jails. Said it happens every day somewhere. It's just so hard to maintain and catch. But be aware that the state is trying to help work with Dorcas and I are real good on that part of our problem too. It's very, as soon as we're 50 less, so that's automatically a big help.
I mean, you know it's a problem when every magistrate in the state, starts listening to what they're saying, because everybody's dealing with it.
Yes, Jerry, you have a question?
These windows and things was broke out. Did anybody get charged for them? Or how did they break them out?
Okay, several years ago, they let us go with, they cut the square footage down per inmate, which allowed us to put triple stackers in some of the cells. We were able to add 16 beds. Okay, these triple stackers, which they're standard made, we ordered them from an institutional company, they have ladders on the end of them. They broke the rims off the ladders and beat them. A broom handle. They can take a broom handle and break them. And they're thick glass, but they can do it.
Yeah, they're very expensive glass. Yeah, they're not going to shatter, they'll break.
But somebody did get
They'll
charged.
get a crack in them.
Yes, we've got several that's been charged with it, but there was one that broke a visitation window out probably 10 years ago. He's not paid anything. The courts will order them to pay, but you can't make them.
You already served time, so how are they going to pay you when they're in jail? That's pretty common that you do charge them with it and
Yes.
they're not able to make restitution. EMS report, Joe.
Thanks, Judge. I report to the court today that we took delivery of the new ambulance last Wednesday. If y'all recall, this company was low bid on the truck, and we were a little bit nervous about it, had some concern that they are not a prevalent company in Kentucky, so we couldn't compare them with much. We went down and toured the factory early on before we actually gave them the PO. They built the truck in 5 weeks from start to finish. We picked it up, went down, picked it up, went through the truck last Wednesday and drove it home. Normally we spend an average about $135,000 for a new truck. We've got $95,000 in this truck, fully painted, decal. We have to install some equipment, radio, things like that. But it is every bit of what they said it would be. Real pleased with the truck. It'll be inspected April 12th to be put on the road.
Can't buy another one for that though, can you?
No.
They bid some others out with $117,000, $18,000 to adjoining counties, so they've had to come up with a price. Recreation Department report.
Soccer's full swing this coming up weekend. If it doesn't rain, we got a baseball tournament to help the Little League Baseball with some money, some funds to help their account. And besides that, just get everything ready.
Landfill solid waste report, John.
Here's our numbers for bulk yard pickup this year. It's not quite as busy as last year, but if you factor we had to stop a couple of days for snow removal and flooding, then it's probably pretty comparable to the previous years.
Yeah, you'll
It's
have a few of those occasionally. Got snow on the way, they say.
It's basically
Hear that, Brad? You like to hear that, don't you, Brad?
It's basically 2,100 cubic yards, 444 tons, 1,300 tires, and approximate cost $17,000 so far.
Where's all them tires come from? You tell me. You're a junker. You say more than anybody.
So that's, so we're
Am I
what?
am I misleading the public on that?
We take them off our truck, we put them on our wagon, we take them off our wagon, we put them out front.
Whenever I get a set of tires though, I'll leave them. I mean, I
So
know-
the public
we don't
will
have
be
a
patient
wagon.
with us. We are at least a week and a half behind. We haven't even got out of the first phase yet. So expect these numbers to grow
Yeah.
as we go. We should already be in the second phase, we're not.
I'm noticing a lot more out too.
Right.
Yeah, I got a lot more out in my district.
So,
Just remind everybody in the public's eye that you can bring your bulky items to the landfill at no additional cost for tipping or dumping it. So I took mine out the other day. It was nice to get rid of it, where people wouldn't pilfer through it at the end of the driveway.
It's my profit.
we still
And I put the scrap metal in the scrap metal pile.
We still recommend whenever your scheduled date is to have it out, because you never know, we may start picking up and start making some ground up. Mike Newton and them have been gracious enough to give us a police officer on really busy roads, and that helps keep people from being people sometimes and going around us. So we appreciate that greatly. It really helps us out.
John, rest of your report.
One more thing. So we got done with the notice of intent in the first phase of landfill expansion. So now we're starting to work on the second phase. And one of the first things we need to do for that is get a geotechnical report. So basically, we need to do geotechnical investigation in the Keeling Farm, if you guys are familiar with that. So basically, we have to prove how much material is there, how deep the material is, make sure we have low permeability clay to make sure we got something to make the liner with. So basically, we need to hire a geotechnical company to come in and do those borings and make sure we have what we need to have.
And we
So-
had to do that on the other expansions before.
No, this match is the same thing. It's just part of the process. and-
You emailed the magistrate
Yes.
that information, I think you said that
Yes.
2 days ago, anyway.
Yes.
This company, he helped us get through it's Wayne Carum, Vector Engineering, get us through the first application. Wayne actually was with the original company who helped the original 30 acres get approved. So he's very familiar with our site. That's the reason we kind of went with this to professional services.
I remind the magistrates that professional services like engineering and attorneys and so forth do not have to go through the public bid process. You have to go through not the advertisement like you would normally do. Just you can interview the folks that you think will provide you the services you need. We've used these folks in the past, and I would strongly recommend, because he's already familiar with the site. You have something to pass out there, John, at all?
But here's just an exhibit on what we need to do, what I can send you guys out. So basically, the Keeling Farm's right here.
Keegan Park's about 200 plus acres.
Yes. So basically, what we have to do, we have to break it down into a grid pattern. Here's our soil boring, some exhibits that I put together, you guys can pass around. So basically, you have 1,000 grid, you have to have 9 soil borings per grid. So basically, what he has proposed to do is to come in, we'll get a backhoe, dig our test pits, he'll have a geologist right there to look at it. We'll know how deep it is, what type of soil it is. He put a proposal to do that for $16,000 that you guys need to
We provide the
look
back.
at.
How does that compare to what when we had the last thing done about 15 years ago?
Well, that was before my time, it was longer than 15 years, anymore, 20.
20? I was here.
This is only a portion of what we're going to spend in this whole process.
Oh, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars for it.
Back when they did the original 30 acres, I'm wanting to say Jim said it was $300,000 with an
Is-
engineering firm.
Oh, yeah.
It was over
Over
3. He got one
that.
price for over 6
Okay.
for the
Iron
design.
Cape Bell, I think, was like the original company.
But they did all the design and everything. John has done a lot of the design on the layout. We can do the engineering stuff, can't do the geotechnical stuff. We're not geotechnical engineers. So,
How deep is the soil out there?
well, that's what we're going to do.
That's what we're gonna find out. It might be 10
It
feet, 12
varies,
feet.
I know, we've
It
done
varies.
some from up on the crown of the field, it's about 5 foot deep. Out on the edges, probably 15 foot deep. So just the way the rock lays. Bernard, we're trying to get it done before crop season comes, because we're gonna make a mess of that field. And so we're trying to dig the holes, fill them back in, let Mother Nature take care of the holes, let it settle back in before they plant crops. That's the reason it's important to get this done for our lease. It's not the end of the world if we do that, I just don't want to do that to farmers. I mean, if we can get this done right now, it's.
We're going to need a motion to approve this contractor to do the work at the
I
land.
make the motion to approve the engineering for the geotechnical study.
Thank you, Jeff. Second by Bernard Ice. Any further discussion? All approved, say aye. Aye. Disapprove? Motion will carry.
That's all I
That's
have.
all you have, John?
Thank you, Tom.
Road Department report.
Okay, so outside of bulky item, we worked one Saturday to get Higdon Loop Bridge open. We put some rock down, basically it's a temporary fix. We will, again, you guys heard the story. Hopefully, Burnich Bridge is done now. It's up. The contractor is done with his part of the contract. It'll be the same thing. If things work out, the city of Barsham's got to put a water line underneath of the bridge, actually hanging from the bridge. Mother Nature allows them to do that Thursday, is the plan. Then the Saturday, we'll take care of the approaches, and then we'll get yours open. And,
Is it okay to drill in that deep?
It's already,
It's already, it was designed that way.
No, I seen the hole in the abutment, but I'm talking.
No, the beam was designed to have inserts in them.
Okay.
Also, it is all through it.
Right.
Yeah, so we
I'm just wondering if they used a hammer drill.
No.
through there, how much it was gonna.
They poured it in just like they did the wall.
I got you.
So they just put the inserts in. We had to strategically know where exactly we wanted them. It actually worked out okay. Keith was down there when we set the beams. It was pretty neat.
Yeah, it was.
Very excellent professional job. That company did real good work. Scott and Murphy.
Both companies.
Yeah, we got really lucky.
Very good job. It looks really nice.
Of course, you guys know on March 12th, we had that slushy, snowy process where that shut us down for one day. If I had to guess, we're gonna have something similar to that in the morning. So our plan is this afternoon, we're bringing the guys in, putting the plows on. We'll come in early and we'll see what Mother Nature brings us, then we'll get back to bulky item after that. We have been working some people on a little later at nighttime and some on weekends trying to get potholes and stop signs. We had a stop sign thief in Jerry's area that went crazy. That's $100 a pop when they take those signs, is what you got into. That's just material. So anytime somebody takes a sign, that's what you're looking at.
I got a text last night that the barrels we put up on.
There's a guy en route now to go look at that.
Okay.
Leonard Hall is what he's talking about. Leonard Hall, we're having some issues with the road sliding again.
We put barrels up and the barrels slid.
Well, we're gonna go see if the barrel slipped or did someone hit it.
That's true, somebody could have hit it.
We'll see.
I doubt it's on my district.
You guys don't even want to talk about that.
I don't know, I see a bunch of people out there with grins on their face, Keith. They know you too.
I will, if it's an issue, you and Dean will hear from me and we'll decide what we'll do with that road until we can get to it.
Okay.
Thank you, Brad.
It's called a barricade.
Under old and new business, first, in your mailbox, I believe you guys received a copy of this from me, just for discussion purposes first. Coroner's salaries. It's come to my attention that probably Nelson County's coroners probably underpaid based on the workload and the amount of cases that have added on, I guess, in the last 8 or 10 years. I passed out a copy of it. Nelson County's coroner makes $11,900 a year. So what I try to do is compare some counties surrounding us, plus some counties that have a population about the same amount that we would have. Some of those counties being, with the population close to us, would be Berrien and Shelby County probably. They're both in the 44,000 to 46,000 range. We're right at 45. The only time a coroner or a county attorney can get a raise is the election year. The May before an election year, fiscal court has to approve any increase in their salary above anything above the natural CPI or cost of living. And that if the court were to give a raise, then it would not take effect to the next year's election cycle. So it wouldn't be effective for this fiscal year that we're in. So it would be for the next person that's elected to that office, whether it be the current coroner or his opposition. As I said, the coroner is making $11,900. Most of those other coroners in the other two counties I mentioned are right at the $20,000, $21,000 range. So about half of what other counties are paying. On top of that, to give them an example, because you got Oldham County's got they're about 20,000 larger than us in population-wise, but their coroner makes $32,000 versus $11,900.
And if you got Bullet with 79, it's only doing 13.7.
Yeah. And then you got Hardin that's got. Did I give you a copy in your mailbox, media? Okay, you got a copy in your mailbox, Jimmy, on that?
No.
Randy's?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Randy's got it, yeah, okay. Hardin County's corner, of course, they're 107,000 population, he's at 54,500 plus benefits, so. There's a wide range of differences, and I recommend that we're not always going to be lucky one day to have an undertaker. I mean, some people say it's conflict of interest, but an undertaker in our county, and many rural counties have that position. Probably the majority of the rural counties have that, an undertaker has that position. And I don't know why he even wants the position, because I assure you, I work with the coroner on a weekly basis many times, dealing with bodies that the family doesn't want to claim. Nobody wants to pay for the expense of doing the services, and we scuffle for a day or two, try to figure out how we're going to get this. Yeah, seriously, we've had bodies at the funeral home sometimes 2 or 3 weeks trying to find somebody that's going to take responsibility, and then finding somebody that will sign cremation forms. If we get to that point, it becomes very difficult. For instance, Hardin County's total budget for their coroner's office is $231,000. Ours is $32,000. So there's a big difference in the cost of doing business. But somewhere along the line, we're not always going to have an undertaker do that. So we need a plan for the future, whatever that may be. That somewhere along the line, it'll be probably a doctor or a retired doctor or some other professional in that field that will want to run for that office. And probably in that time, you'll probably have to have a separate office, separate board, et cetera, et cetera. All that becomes real money. But in doing so, I still think the coroners need to be paid, compensated for their job a little bit closer to what other counties are doing. I'm open for suggestions, comments. No action today, obviously, at all, but I want you guys to look at it, because in April, we're going to be discussing it a little more seriously, because we have till May 1 to decide. You don't have to do a thing. But I think in the future, if we want to continue to grow like the county has grown, they need to be compensated as professionals.
What does it cost for a cremation?
The actual cost, I can't give an exact number,
Well,
but we
close.
pay $950.
$950.
$50.
That's pauper burial.
That's called a pauper burial. That includes the undertaker taking the body to the crematory. First place, he's picked up the body first at no cost. Okay, so then he takes the body to the crematory in Louisville, and then has to go back and pick up the remains. So there's 2 trips to Louisville. The cremation, I think, is in the $400 to $500 range. It depends on the size of the body. I know I had my dog cremated recently. It was based on his size. But I don't know about the human side of it. But I mean, there is we're paying probably about $400 or $500 more in most counties for cremations. Last time I surveyed, that's been a couple of years since I've surveyed.
Why is that?
Because I'd just be fair. I mean, $950 is not a lot of money to deal with what they have to deal with. I promise you. You go out and pick up some of these folks that have had accidents and stuff, and you got body bags included, your vehicle's messed up. I mean, you go through a whole scenario. Kalen knows what I'm talking about, because he's seen it as a deputy sheriff, I'm sure, haven't you, Kalen?
Yeah.
Yeah, you too, Raymond. You've probably seen it. I know this Mike Newton's seen it, where somebody's committed suicide and you got to deal with body bags. And I mean,
Especially in summertime.
just think about it. I'm open for ideas. Okay? Okay, next under old new business. This is old business, sort of. This is going back, this is way old business, several months ago. It's called the Kentucky Wired Program. Kentucky Wired has, you guys have reluctantly held off. Okay. Yeah. Magistrate Lear is going to step out since he's in the internet business. Main reason why the fiscal court over the last 8 to 10 months has balked on the idea of approving a franchise agreement with Bluegrass Network is that the press about the time it was presented to us was not very kind to Kentucky Wired about the financial crisis and the cost overruns and et cetera. I've indicated to some of the magistrates that probably is not going to help Nelson County as much as it would be a county like Marion and Washington, and more rural in nature. but it has to come to point A to get to point B to get to point C. Follow what I'm saying, guys?
No.
No, you know what I'm talking about. You talked about it this morning. You want to introduce yourself and make your presentation, please?
Absolutely, absolutely. I appreciate the time this morning. My name is Philip Brown. I'm the Executive Director of the Kentucky Communications Network Authority. And that's the state agency that was created to manage and oversee this project. I'm actually, the first of next month will be my year mark with KCNA. So I stepped into the project after it was about a year and a half old. And prior to that, I was Chief of Staff over the Tourism, Arts, and Heritage Cabinet. Focus was state parks and hunting and fishing and tourism and all the things that make Kentucky a great place to live and make Kentucky a great place to have people who don't live here come and spend their money. And this was a change of pace, but prior to joining state government, I did have a background in broadband, and that's sort of why the governor asked me to step in to this agency. Kentucky Wired, of course, was started, first announced in 2014, and then contracts were signed with the private sector partners on the project in September of 2015. So the project was initiated before the current administration stepped in. That's important because the project is funded through majority, it's bond funding that has been released, it's been committed. $270 million of the project's budget is out the door. Contracts have been signed and are valid and enforceable. Kentucky's got multiple contracts with private sector partners. This is a public-private partnership that are valid and enforceable. In essence, the project, once it was started, was incredibly expensive to contemplate eliminating or terminating. And if you're referring to some of the media that's been out there over the last 6 to 9 months, you've seen calls to cut our losses or to terminate Kentucky Wired. And the simple fact of the matter is that when you make a decision to cut losses, the contemplation is you're not going to spend more money. And there's no two ways about it. If Kentucky were to terminate Kentucky Wired, it will cost us more money than it will to finish it. I 100% guarantee everybody in this room that. There is no way that Kentucky can spend less money by killing this project.
Why is that?
Because, and that's because...
I mean, when I'm in business, you don't operate that way, so how come this one's operating that way?
It's because of the contracts we have and the bond funding that's been committed. Kentucky can terminate any contract it wants with 30 days notice. That's part of state law. You have a contract with Kentucky, at any moment Kentucky can say 30 days from now our contract is terminated. But in that situation, you have extraordinary rights to bring claims against the Commonwealth. Now, if we have a breach scenario, if we have cause, that's a different situation entirely. But to just simply decide to terminate the project where we stand today, we will be terminating the project for convenience. And so our private sector partners in this project, the people that have built 700 miles of it, would have the ability to come to us and say, we had an expectation of revenue over 30 years. We have expended money. We have made plans and it's costs, and they would be able to say, you owe us all that.
Sort of like a taking. You're taking...
Yeah, I mean, it's just a scenario where our legal position would not be great. It would immediately shove the Commonwealth into lengthy, costly litigation. The bond funding I mentioned. We spent $165 million of bond funding. So that's people that have bought these bonds with an expectation that they're going to see a return over 30 years. If we kill the project, we have to return that money. That's $165 million we have to put back into bondholders' hands right away. And the bond buyers in America, they're not aggressive investors. They don't need a huge return. What they want is a guaranteed return on investment.
And tax-free.
And some of our bonds are tax-free. Some of our bonds are taxable, some are tax-free. So if we were to make the decision to terminate, I'd have to give the bondholders back the money that we've already spent. We'd have some bond principal left, which we would give back to them as well. Because if you take out a loan from the bank, you decide not to build the house after you're halfway done, you don't go ahead and keep spending the loan you got. You give that part back, but the bank's going to want the money you spent back, right? First call on these bonds isn't until 2025, so bond buyers have got an expectation of interest for the next 7 fiscal years. We need to make some provision for that. Consequences of not paying back to bondholders would be that every time Kentucky tries to sell a bond buyers will remember.
For bridges, for whatever they may be.
Anything. Our cost of capital would absolutely go up for every bonding that we attempt to do.
Are these McCreary bonds?
Some of the bonds, they were issued through KEDFA. KEDFA was a conduit bond issuer. Macquarie is they are private, but they were issued backed by KEDFA, backed by the full faith and credit of the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
What percentage is McCreary?
Well, I mean, all of them were issued through the P3 entity. Let me talk about the importance of Nelson County real quick. It's a 3,200 mile long construction project. It's really complex. I will stand here and talk with everybody in the room for hours, if you like, but I also want to be respectful of your time.
Please, thank you.
The red lines here are the backbone of this network. Okay, so that's 288 strands of fiber. Everywhere you see red. Part of the backbone goes through Nelson County. So as we travel south to Hardin County, Hart County, Glasgow, and this is part of Ring 3, we've got to come through Nelson County. Then as we come through Nelson County, pick up all the state government sites that are here in the county and in Bardstown. We then travel on into Washington and Marion counties. BGN is doing that work for us. We signed that agreement with BGN because they're a local provider that already has infrastructure on the ground. And they're able to build these parts of the network for us at a lower cost than our greenfield construction. So that only makes sense. It answers the question, why would you overbuild if you don't have to? And we sought out third-party agreements wherever they were possible. In some places, the provider that would be a logical builder for us did not want the work. And so that's why we're doing greenfield. But these represent third-party agreements. Every single one of these saved the project money. And in terms of direct loss claims to our subcontractors because of delays, I've been able to pay those costs paid to date completely through savings. The engineering for Marion and Washington counties is completely done. And BGN could hang fiber in those counties today. But without the connection point from Nelson County over to the backbone, that fiber can't do anything. I can't light it, I can't do anything with it. So, if I can't get through Nelson County, well, the first thing, we just won't provide, we can't provide service to the sites here. And the project is a little bit like a house with a foundation, you've got pillars in the basement. One of the foundational pillars is how we pay off the bonds over the life of the 30 years. That comes from site revenue. So if I start taking sites out of the network, if I just don't build in Nelson County, that's a little bit less money that we'll have to pay the bonds off over the life of the 30 years of the project. That's not great. It's not great for Kentucky. It's not great for the state government sites that are here that won't have access to the rest of the state's network. But if I can't get through the county, eventually what I'll have to do is do some sort of expensive pivot. I know all of you are familiar with change orders. You know, in a construction project, you do a change order. You do too many change orders, it can eat the owner of the project up because they're expensive. I'm no different. If I go to our subcontractors, because BGN can't get through Nelson County, I'm going to have to say, you're going to have to find an alternate route that goes around Nelson County entirely. We'll have to reroute this section of the backbone. I don't know what sort of feasibility that is from an engineering and design standpoint because I don't even want to ask them to start looking at it. The second I start asking, can you take a look and see what a redesign or reroute would be, I will get a bill that wasn't in the original project's budget. And that will continue. If we actually had to do that, it would cost us millions of dollars. That was not in the original project budget, and I don't have. And so the next thing we have to do is also redesign to come up to capture Marion and Washington counties by coming up through Taylor County. Likely. That would be expensive also.
Why would, if you left off Nelson, that stretch there looks really close to that stretch from Taylor to Marion?
Because the design is already finished.
Design is probably 50% of your project, 20%.
The design and the engineering is it's just an expensive activity. You know, we've spent $230 million to date total, and we've got almost 95% statewide of the design and engineering for the project finished. Engineering the project, with 88,000 telephone poles, part of the project. We're burying 15%, 85% of the project is on poles. I would love to say that we're burying all of it, but Kentucky's got a lot of rock. And burying that much conduit would have made the project a lot more expensive.
How you getting right away to bury this?
We're using existing easements, agreements with cities and municipalities, state highways wherever possible.
Well, Bluegrass has already got a lot probably, if they're through the third party.
That's right,
Yeah.
that's right, and that helps
Bluegrass
us.
is who's doing this.
Let me cut to the chase, because I think, what I'm sensing is there's a lot of that mentality, Kentucky never should have done this. And I gotta tell you, when I have a broadband background, I was a policy consultant to state governments. And I was almost uniformly very cautious about government-owned broadband projects. You can look across the country and see broadband projects that are delayed, over budget. It happens. It's a construction project. Getting poles ready for a new fiber it's a lengthy process. You have to do it pole by pole by pole. The engineering is a pole by pole process. It's unique for every pole. How old is it? How tall is it? What's it made out of? Who else is there? Who's got to move up a foot? Who's got to move down 6 inches? Pole by pole by pole. It's expensive.
Do you have to pay pole by pole price?
You do.
You have to rent those poles.
We pay pole attachment fees, just like anyone else. So there is a mentality Kentucky shouldn't have done this, and I wouldn't even debate it. It's a complicated project. I've said that when I stepped in a year ago, learning about Kentucky Wired is a little bit like the 5 stages of grief. You've got a feeling of being overwhelmed because it's a 3,200 mile long construction project that Kentucky has committed $300 million to already, and it's behind and there are challenges. It's complicated. Then you've got a process, and I went through it as well, where you say, well, maybe we should terminate this project. Maybe that would be the best thing for Kentucky to do. And then you look at our contracts. And you look at the section of the state procurement code that talks about our liabilities if we terminate a project for convenience. And then usually there is there's somewhere in there a creative phase. I had it, is there an alternate way to do this? Can we scale the project back to its original scope and just do Eastern Kentucky? You realize that you can't really do that because, like I said, my foundation, how I pay for it, is based on a statewide impact. Statewide number of sites. With just an Eastern Kentucky footprint, we wouldn't save much money, but we wouldn't have a way to pay off the bonds long term.
Well, wasn't that what this was designed for, the eastern part of the state?
That was the initial concept. But when the state looked at it, they decided.
Did the state or the private partners want to change it?
The state did that. They wanted to get to post-secondary education. They wanted to get to all KCTCS sites. That was the state's decision. And I guess what I'm driving at is the decision in 2015 to sign these contracts and let the bonds and do this, it's not something I can undo. And that was considered when Governor Bevins stepped into office. All across state government and every cabinet, they did a top to bottom examination of everything. Every administration does that.
Yeah.
And they looked at this project and they thought about these scenarios. They thought about killing it. They looked at what it would cost. You need to understand the impact of all the possible avenues that you could take, right? They looked at that, they looked at scaling it back, they looked at slowing it down. And all of them are more expensive. So we are really in a situation where we have to finish the project. The negative fiscal impact just to killing the project is, conservatively, I'm estimating $700 million all in. So the $230 we've spent to date, you add the difference, that's what Kentucky can spend on this project. And have no asset.
To 700?
Yes.
Where do you come up with something?
Okay, $165 million back to the bondholders. Interest on bonds until first call in 2025 is about $85 million. We have about $12 million in breakage fees just to shut down that side of the project. That's the bond side. That's satisfying the bondholders' basic expectations.
Even if you shut it down now, you still got to pay them till 2025?
If we don't pay them the interest that they have in it, because I can't call the bonds until 2025. So if we stop paying interest on the bonds, Kentucky's bond rating will take a hit.
I understand.
So that's just to satisfy the
I feel like
bondholders.
you not paying your car payment. Legal coming all the way.
Yeah, but I understand that too, but when you got, Kentucky needs bridges, Kentucky needs roadways. This broadband, don't get me wrong, I think we need it, but I'm just scared to death of it. I don't know enough about it. You say you've only been in it a year. How did you get
She
so?
was had a previous history of broadband.
What kind of previous history did you have? Did you own a company?
8 years broadband policy consultant. Before that, I was with the Broadcasting Trade Association in
Why
Washington.
did you get out of it? And if it was such a good business, why did you get out of it?
We weren't a last mile provider, and I had a great offer from Governor Bevin to step into the Tourism Arts and Heritage Cabinet. It's a
Let's focus on, if we can, on the ordinance that you had presented to us, and that was for a franchise agreement. Yeah.
Sure.
We can argue all day long about why he's doing
I'm not
that.
arguing, I'm just trying to get a point.
and look, it's an important
When you
conversation.
don't
Like
know
I
something
said,
about something, you gotta ask. When I go buy a new car, as you said, I ask what the gas mileage is, how much the tires, where I'm gonna get out of it, and that's what I'm doing here.
and I understand that and appreciate it. I really do. And it's my 5 stages of grief. Eventually, you come to resignation. That's the last stage. And there's a little bit of anger there because there were decisions made with our contract, with the things Kentucky's responsible for in the contract if things go wrong, that I wouldn't have made. Governor Bettman would have made decisions to accept some of the terms, but we did. Kentucky did that. And so, we're not building a time machine. It's a broadband network. If we could go back in time and change those things, we would, but we can't. Because BGN is building here, they do need a franchise to get through the county and get through the city.
A question on that.
Yes.
Assuming we do that, and you get a franchise, are you the only person that can say another company wants to use that same right away?
They need a franchise. So the 288 fiber strands, and then the laterals are smaller, but that's because we don't need as many fibers on the laterals, but there's still going to be some available to lease to other broadband providers. We're not going to be providing last mile service. We're not going to houses, we're not going to businesses, we're going to state government sites as far as last mile, but 50% of our capacity is going to be available for anyone else to use to build off of and get last mile service, expand their network. BGN is expanding their network. They're making as they roll with trucks for us, they're making their networks bigger. That's what EKN is doing, that's what Cincinnati Bell is doing. So, and in the process of doing work for us, they're making their own services better to residences and businesses. But they need a franchise. So, franchise from my project to get the state's infrastructure built is just for our government-to-government service, and then anyone that wants to build off that and do commercial work, because we're not any sort of commercial business whatsoever. They would need a franchise from you as well.
Our franchise agreement would be, if we agreed to it, would be with Bluegrass Network.
Right.
It's not with Kentucky Wired. It's not with any other entity.
Well, what do we make off that franchise agreement? Anything?
We usually get a franchise tax off of it, a small amount.
Like how much?
I don't know, since it's government owned, it may not be.
We're not going to have any revenues. Not in the way that you're thinking of when you think of franchise and a company that's selling something on to anyone in this room who's buying broadband.
You're doing it for some reason.
Would you compare this to the 1920s, 30s, and 40s when electric went to East Kentucky Power and Kentucky Power, went to the state and built these big transmission lines, and then Salt River can buy from East Kentucky Power, the electric company. They buy from East Kentucky Power. Doesn't buy, don't go to people's homes usually. They're through this area anyway. Would you compare it to that?
It's possible.
That's why I look at it.
When the PBA's office, county clerk's office, is paying for their broadband, they're going to be, we're not going to do monthly bills. I may do an annual bill, similar to, and this is speculative, but state government cars, the fleet, agencies pay an annual fee based on the number of cars they have to the finance cabinet, and that covers the cost of the cars that are assigned to a cabinet or an agency. I don't have any cars, by the way. We don't have any assigned to us, but there's an annual fee to the Commonwealth Office of Technology that covers the cost of our computers and tech support, but it's annual. It's part of the agency's budget on a year-to-year basis. That's likely what we're going to do here with the sites that we're connecting as far as government. So, our revenues, there's not going to be. We're just trying to break even. I'm going to close with this, and I'll keep answering questions.
Let me just say this: whatever you finish up today, I will bring it back to the fiscal court meeting on April 3,
Okay,
and then they can vote it up or down, and we're going to move on.
okay.
I mean, it's not, I mean, we've talked about this for 8 months, it's time to use.
What happened to the other two guys that came and presented? How come they're not here?
They're with BGN. And so, you know,
They told us it was gonna be 100 strand, and I just heard you say it was gonna be a 288 strand?
on the reds, on the backbone, it's 288. So 100 coming through, because we don't need as many strands on the laterals.
Okay.
The only thing that happens with the delay in this project is it costs Kentucky taxpayers more money. It's the only thing that happens.
What county is it in right now?
Well, we're kind of all over. I said 700 miles, but there's a couple hundred up here.
Have you done went through some counties and got a franchise agreement? What counties was they? So,
I don't know what BGN has done as far as franchise agreements with other municipalities. I know that as far as,
I'm talking about Kentucky wide.
okay, so the state itself, all the areas in white, where we're having our contractors build for us, and we own all that fiber. We haven't gotten a franchise from a local government at all.
At all?
At all.
Out of the 120
No.
counties?
We signed MOUs.
Why are you picking on us? Why are you coming to us, and why do you want us to be first?
I'm not asking you to be first. BGN needs a franchise agreement from you all in order to fulfill their contract with us. They have a contract with the state to build part of our network for us. And if they can't do that, they're going to come to us and say, we cannot fulfill our part of the contract to you, and we want you to let us out of it. And so at that point, I have a big gap all the way across Nelson County. And that's where I have to call my subcontractors and say, this is no longer part of our third-party agreement. I've had to let BGN out of it. And in order to cover this, I would then have to ask them to design they would have to do the engineering and design themselves. That's a multi-million-dollar change order. And we don't have it, so that won't happen. And so we would drop the whole county. And if I do that, it is irrevocable. I can never take it back. We'll never come back in and do it later. Nelson County would be permanently omitted from the network.
Why?
Because we can't. I don't have several million dollars to initiate a change order to redo a route that has already been designed. I'll have to build up from Taylor County into Marion to pick up Marion and Washington.
Marion desperately wants it.
So, you know, the impact here is, it's not just Nelson County. Now, if we have to spend millions of extra dollars on the project to tackle this area of the state, we're going to spend that on the redesign and engineering from Taylor to Marion. I have to say this. Since I stepped in a year ago, my priority has been, how can I keep this project from costing taxpayers any more money than it's already going to? And that is removing barriers to construction. And right now, we have a barrier to construction here. I've got barriers to construction in lots of places. They're different. Not all of them are this issue. Some of them are others. But all of them have the potential to cost Kentucky taxpayers money. And I don't want that. You know, I think Kentucky's paying plenty of money for this project already. And if I can stop that from getting any bigger, I think that's our responsibility. But I do have to recognize the reality of the contract that we signed. And so I'm trying to make the best of a tough situation. And we really need your help.
Is the state going to make any money off this?
We're going to break even.
Break even.
Why is BGN getting the franchise and not the state? Why wouldn't the state just come to the fiscal court and say, hey, like if when you build a highway, you have a subcontractor that builds the highway, but it's the actual state?
Because where BGN is building for us, which is all the blue areas inside Ring 3, well, actually inside this blue area, all the blue lines inside this area here, BGN's going to own that fiber, and we're leasing it from them. The state's leasing it. It's called an IRU, an indefeasible right to use. And for us, the state, like I said, by assigning BGN, and up here this is Brady Road Telephone, by assigning them responsibility to build this part of the network for us and leasing it from them, it saved the project money. I've saved $25 million to date. Not I personally, but the project has saved $25 million to date by doing agreements like this. And if I could do more of them, I would. You know, if I could start over and design this from scratch, if we did it, I would try to find Kentucky companies all the way across the state to build this part of the network. You know, we're finalizing one down here. And it's because it saves the project money. It saves the state money, it saves the taxpayers money. Our cost overruns, you know, Kentucky essentially assumed all the risk in the construction phase. The schedule was wildly optimistic, unrealistic. It's what it simply was. And if things went wrong in that schedule, Kentucky said, we'll hold the risk. They got a Kentucky got a smaller initial price tag with, you know, this huge liability if things went wrong. And they did, because it's a 3,000-mile-long construction project. And so our subcontractors bring us direct loss claims. And we spent extra money because of this delay. And by the contract, you have to pay us back for that. So it's not even a penalty. It's not like it's a set fee in case something's late. They've incurred costs in the past, and they're bringing us their bills. I have to pay them if they're valid. And we review every single page. We review every penny. And we try to determine if it's necessary. But that's what we're dealing with.
Bill, I want
Yeah.
to see if the magistrates want any further questions. You can go on and on, but I'd rather have direct questions. If they don't have any questions, we'll ask the audience if they've got any questions.
I got a real quick question. Kind of educate me on this franchise thing. Is it the same thing as getting like an easement? Is it the same?
A franchise agreement is the rights to go into a county, either with telecommunications, TV. We have a franchise agreement now with the folks in the south end of the county for the TV and internet service. I can't remember the name. Spectrum. They've changed so many over the years. Spectrum, and so the counties have the authority to authorize those franchise agreements.
Which the pros and cons would be. The pros, you get to build your fiber through the Nelson County, and the cons against the county would, I mean, what's the adverse effect of doing that, as far as like, would it affect the other, cable company, the fiber companies? What's the cons against allowing the franchise to come in?
I give my opinion because I'm the judge. I'm going to give you my opinion. It creates competition.
Yeah.
For unserved areas. We have still some unserved areas in this county.
Right.
And it would allow another private company to come in and serve some rural areas coming in from other sections. Sort of like our water lines. I mean, I see it differently.
There's a parallel there.
Yeah, sort of like our water lines were back in the early 90s. We had other counties that were able to come over across the county line and serve our rural constituents that wanted potable water into their homes instead of wells.
Sure.
And I see this happening the same way. It'd be much smaller because Bardstown done a pretty good job of going out in our rural areas and our suburban and outer urban areas,
right.
where we're better off than 80% of the counties, probably 90%.
County, that doesn't affect them. They obviously can't build in Marion County. I mean,
Marion County's hoping. I just talked to the judge this morning. I talked to him last week about this subject. Marion County's hoping that since they're not as equipped as we are in our county, that they'll have some other Bluegrass will take those lines or another company come in and expand internet out in the rural areas there. It becomes more feasible for them to do that. But Bloomfield's got Bardstown now. Bardstown bought Bloomfield.
They do, but they don't have like, they've got.
They don't have that spider web all the way out there.
Not everybody's provided the internet service.
Well, this fiber here is not going to go to everybody.
No, it's not, but it's going to
gives the trunk to be able to go.
Trunk line.
It'd be like
it'll be there.
having a 16-inch water line that you can spring off an 8-inch on.
Right.
So you're telling me on this line, if I so choose to get in business, I can come buy some of that cable provider?
Splice off of it, lease it from us.
What's that going to cost?
Pricing's not set yet. It's a little early. We're about 18 months behind, and so it'd be early to set a price.
Well, Bluegrass has probably got a price from you, I would think.
Not on the wholesaling. The wholesaling is done by Macquarie. That's part of their end of this project. Is they do the wholesaling, share the revenue back with the state. We're going to take that revenue and refresh the network in 10 years or 20 years. State of Iowa did a network like this about 20 years ago, and they had no money to refresh the network. The fiber doesn't change. The fiber, in all likelihood, will be here 40 and 50 years from now, still doing its job just great. The network that you connect to the fiber, or the equipment that you connect to the fiber, goes obsolete fairly quickly. And if you don't refresh it, your network becomes obsolete. So Kentucky's going to use wholesale revenue to cover those costs to make sure that the network stays. I mean, the idea is we're going to provide for the 288 fibers, 144 are going to be for state government on the backbone, and then we'll have roughly half for the rest of it. Today, all the state government's traffic is carried on 2 fibers, just 2. So we're planning ahead for the future. You know, there are multiple cities across the Commonwealth. Like it's in Louisville, are the biggest examples, but the city of Richmond is doing this as well, and a few others. Actually buying fiber from us, instead of installing a 288 on backbone, we're installing 432 count with the extra 144 fibers owned by the municipality, where the municipality is only paying us the extra costs. You know, there's a little bit of extra weight, so it takes a little bit of extra engineering, and you know, they're paying the incremental cost of the truck roll, but it's a way for a city to own, city or county government, Oldham County's doing this, where they're going to own fiber of their own to use for their own municipal purposes. The idea is provide for what you need now and also provide well into the future.
So quick question, you talked about competition. How does this speed compare to what we already have? I mean, internet speed can directly correlate to your the cost of living, your home value.
The middle mile network, the analogy most commonly used is that of an interstate, and we use that one because it's the best one. If we all wanted to go to Nashville, we get on I-65. If we wanted to go to Glasgow, we may or may not get on I-65, depending on whether or not you like a more scenic drive. Interstates carry a lot of traffic, and they carry it at a very high speed. Middle mile networks are the same way. Local ISPs, your local providers, they're like your local road system. My middle mile network, which is what carries all that traffic to internet points of presence in Louisville or Cincinnati, that's like the interstate. So my speeds aren't, I mean, we'll enable gigabit connectivity. You know, using a fiber to the home network or middle mile fiber, depending on what you build off of that, you know, gigabit connectivity is absolutely possible. What we're going to be providing at state universities is we're going to quadruple their speed. We're going to give them 100 gigs, and we're going to keep their price level. So we're going to quadruple U of L, UK, Western. They're all going to get 4 times faster speed. Really, their equipment is going to be what constrains their ability to use our network at that point. It's like if you have a gigabit at your house, you're not buying a computer that handles a gig. Most of the computers you would go buy at a computer store, they can handle 50 to 100 megabits. A lot of people want to have a gig because it sounds great, and you know, AT&T started offering gigabits in Louisville and other places, but most people's equipment can't handle it. And my network is the same thing. The speed is there. It can enable as much speed as someone wants.
So the expectation would be this will be faster than what we currently have.
Right. So if a provider builds off of our middle mile network, they're going to have fiber closer to wherever it is they're serving. And so their path to return on investment is shorter. And that's really, in terms of last mile broadband deployment, that's what makes these decisions for companies. How quickly can I make my money back? At what point do I go from red to black on my balance sheet with this capital expenditure? And so if I can get them closer to wherever it is they're trying to go, and they're building off of one of our laterals or our backbone, then their path to ROI is shorter because they're not having to build as far themselves. You know, it's open access. Anybody can lease it from us. And you know,
what's the lease going to cost? You mentioned lease 10 times. That's a wide open question.
And that's a function of Macquarie, which is a private sector entity in this project. They have 100% ownership of the wholesaling activity, and they'll set the prices.
But how many households, like right now, they're paying a light bill and water bills and those necessities, and then this is going to be $100 a month, $50 a month, $20 a month? How are they going to factor that budget in if they don't have a clue what it's going to cost?
Your last mile prices to consumers and middle mile prices, it's two very different things.
Like I said, I'm not very educated.
Yeah, it's totally different products.
They won't be the Bluegrass Networks our customers will be dealing with initially. Which many of us are already dealing with already. If you got Bluegrass.
Well, I apologize if I asked anything I shouldn't ask. I'm just trying to get educated.
They're fair questions.
If you're not in any other county, go to another county first and let us see if the other counties like it. And then, I mean, why do you want to come to Nelson County? We're 45,000 people.
We're going to all 120 counties.
Okay, we'll go to one of those.
I can't get, it's because I can't get to, I can't really get to any of these places, so I come through here.
But I want to see, so we can talk, we can educate ourselves, so the education comes after the door. I do appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
For the fiscal court members, I do plan to bring this to a vote next meeting. Okay?
Thank you all.
Thank you all so
You
much.
didn't ask me any questions I don't get in from your legislators, so, and no offense, it's, they're fair.
Same here, buddy. No,
I'm fully supportive, Phil, I want you to know from it. I've done before here. I'm fully supportive of this project.
Thank you.
And, but again, it's forecasting the future. It's not as much for today. It's for our kids and our grandkids and our great-grandkids.
well, you know, it's about like that jail thing that Jeff's talking about, that Madison County.
Yeah.
They're being the guinea pig to do any.
They haven't got any
I personally don't think it's gonna go.
I don't need it.
And, you know, so let's watch them. If they make it, then we'll know. It's time for us to jump aboard.
Yeah. Sometimes we have to be leaders instead of followers.
That's true. So why are you picking on a small county, 45,000 people?
Any other business magistrates? Entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Bernard Ice. Oh, yeah, I forgot about Lear back there. Motion by.
Back in there.
Motion by Bernard Ice. Is there a second? Second by Jerry Hahn. All approved, say aye. Aye. Disapprove. Motion carries.